I worked the overnight cleaning shift at a hospital in Milwaukee back in 2018. It wasn't a huge hospital, 3 floors, mostly long-term care and outpatient surgery, but big enough that nights could feel endless. Most of the staff cleared out by 9:30. From then on, it was just a skeleton crew, a nurse or two, maybe one doctor on call, and us janitors. I liked it. Quiet halls. No patients buzzing for attention. No doctors barking orders. About 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, they brought in a new guy named Mason to help with the overnight janitorial crew. He was probably in his mid-40s, tall and skinny to the point of looking malnourished. Like his limbs were just a little too long. He had this kind of twitchy, rigid posture, like he was always trying to shrink into his own spine. Didn't make much eye contact. When he did talk, his voice was flat but polite. Too polite. Like he was mimicking the tone, but not really feeling it. They assigned him to the sub-basement level. Laundry rooms, storage, mechanical stuff. Mostly isolated. But within a week, I started seeing him in areas he wasn't scheduled for. One time near the women's locker room on the 2nd floor. Another time just outside pediatrics, standing at the end of the hall like he was waiting for something. I caught him once in the 3rd floor lounge staring out the window with the lights off. He flinched when I walked in and said he got lost. At first I thought he might have just been socially off. Maybe something neurodivergent. He never said anything overtly creepy, just uncomfortable. Like he couldn't decide how close to stand or where to look when talking. But then small things started piling up. Used gloves and trash bins from rooms that weren't assigned to anyone that night. A partially unwrapped tampon in one of the maintenance closets. Laundry bins containing folded hospital gowns from the women's recovery wing, even though that floor hadn't been used that shift. One of the nurses, Brianna, mentioned how weird it was that she kept seeing someone walk past the window of the women's restroom when it should have been empty. Then one night, one of the newer nurses came storming into the break room. She looked pissed and flustered. Said she'd found something seriously messed up in the 4th floor patient bathroom. I followed her up. She showed me the air vent above the sink. It was loose. When she tugged it open, there was a small GoPro camera taped inside with black electrical tape, mounted and aimed directly down toward the sink and mirror. We took it straight to security. Within the hour, they had techs checking every patient room and restroom across the women's care wing. They found 5 more cameras, all hidden in either restrooms or rooms marked for female patients. One inside the toilet tank of a room that had been closed for repainting. Another stuffed behind a wall vent in a room for post-operative hysterectomy recovery. Security went to pull camera footage and badge logs. Turned out Mason's keycard had accessed the 4th floor multiple times a night. Every night, even though he wasn't assigned above sublevel. Most of those entries happened between 2 and 4 a.m., when we should have all been cleaning or resting. They confronted him the next shift. I wasn't there for it, but the supervisor told me he didn't argue or deny it. Just stood there and blinked. Said, "I was only watching." That line made my skin crawl. Only watching. Like it was benign. They put him on administrative leave immediately. Police got involved. Warrants, interviews, all of it. Then we started hearing rumors. Not official, but leaked from a nurse who dated one of the detectives. They had found more footage at his apartment. External hard drives labeled by room number and date. One of them had my name written on the outside in black marker. I never felt so fucking violated in my life. He had apparently been recording for months. Not just women using the bathrooms, but nurses changing, patients being examined. One file was titled Room 312, Night Crying. That's where they kept dementia patients. He was watching elderly women cry in their sleep. The worst part? There were cameras hidden inside the dirty linen carts, the same ones we wheeled around every floor, meaning he had likely caught people undressing, changing bedpans, doing wound care. All of it. They found dozens of tiny cameras at his place, hidden in tissue boxes, inside light fixtures, even inside an old pager casing. He had DIY'd his own surveillance network. There was no record of him ever having a job before ours. No references. His address turned out to be a basement unit rented under someone else's name. They found several wigs, old uniforms, and boxes of used personal items taken from employee lockers, bras, makeup kits, even toothbrushes. And yet, somehow, he never got charged with more than illegal surveillance. There was no physical assault. There is no direct evidence he harmed anyone physically, at least. But that didn't matter. Almost every woman on staff left within 6 months. I know at least 2 who ended up in therapy. As for me, I quit. I took a warehouse job in Waukesha, somewhere with cameras I could see. Somewhere with locks that didn't need a badge to override. I still think about him sometimes. The way he moved. His voice. That stiff, quiet smile he always forced at the end of every shift. And now, even years later, if I find something just a little out of place, like my toothbrush moved or a camera light blinking on my phone, I used to work at a slaughterhouse just outside of Louisville. I won't say which one, but if you've ever driven I-64 and passed those long, low buildings that smell like copper and steam, you probably drove right past it. I was a sanitation guy, graveyard shift. My job was to power wash the kill floors, hose out the holding pens, and make sure all the drains ran clean by the time the morning crew came in. The place always had a layer of stink on it. Even after hours of scrubbing, you couldn't scrub away the scent of blood. Some guys got used to it. I never did. But the pay was solid, and I had a record, so options were thin. The first time I met Calvin, he didn't introduce himself. I walked into the locker room before shift, and he was already in there, standing by the sinks, shirtless, covered in deep pink water and flecks of meat. His back was to me. He was just staring at the mirror. Not at his own face, but lower, at the edge of the glass, like he was watching something behind the reflection. I said something like, "You all right, man?" He didn't look at me, didn't nod, nothing. Just grabbed a towel, dried off slowly, and left. Calvin had a reputation. Quiet, but not shy. More like indifferent. He didn't eat lunch in the break room. He didn't smoke with the rest of us. He stayed behind after shift to double-check his sections, but no one ever asked why. The supervisors liked him, said he worked clean, efficient, dependable, but he gave the rest of us the creeps. One guy claimed he caught Calvin scraping the hooves of one of the hog carcasses with his fingernail, even though the hog had already been processed and tagged. Another time, I saw him in the freezer corridor, wearing a full rain suit and goggles. That wasn't unusual. We all suited up in there. But he wasn't working, just standing between racks of frozen meat. I asked if he was stuck. He said, "I'm listening." Listening to what? No answer. Over time, I started noticing weird changes to the kill floor. Hooks would be missing. Drain grates would be removed and left nearby, like someone had reached into them. One morning, a supervisor found a whole pig heart pinned to the inside of a locker with a boning knife. We all got pulled into a staff meeting. They asked if we'd seen anything. Everyone said no, including Calvin. Then came the smell. You'd think you couldn't distinguish any new stench in a slaughterhouse, but this was different. It smelled like rotted milk and formaldehyde. Not something from a pig or cow. This was off, sweet and sickly. I followed it once, down past the loading docks and into a side room we rarely used anymore. The room had been converted years ago from a freezer to a cold storage closet, but nobody went in there because the ventilation didn't work properly. I opened the door and almost puked. Inside were 7 or 8 small plastic bins, like the kind used to store bolts or gaskets. Each one was filled with meat. Gray-pink, no clear animal source, and each one had human names scribbled on duct tape. First names only. Melissa, Tara, Becca. All women, all familiar. Then I remembered. We had women on the packing line. 3 of them had quit recently. No big drama, just new jobs, or family stuff. One had gone no contact after her last shift. I backed out and slammed the door. I didn't report it. I should have. I know that. But there was this part of me, this scared, guttural part, that knew Calvin would find out. He always seemed to know who said what. One guy tried to call him out once for leaving his station early, and 2 days later, his tires were slashed and someone put blood in his glove box. Animal blood, we thought. Maybe not. The final straw came in February. We were short-staffed, and I got assigned to follow Calvin on final rinse down. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. Around 3:30 a.m., we were working the awful chute, a nasty area where discarded organs and trimmings get flushed. Calvin was ahead of me, scraping buildup off the walls. Then he paused and asked, "You ever wonder if the floor remembers who bled on it?" I didn't answer. He kept working, like nothing happened. 15 minutes later, I heard a sound, like wet cloth hitting concrete. I turned the corner and saw Calvin dragging something wrapped in a plastic sheet into the cold chute. He didn't see me. I backed away, didn't say a word. The next morning, one of the line women didn't show up for her shift. Her locker was untouched, her car still in the lot. I quit the next day, told them it was migraines or some other bullshit. Didn't even go back to get my last check. A few months later, I heard that room, the one with the plastic bins, had been converted again, this time sealed off. No one talks about Calvin anymore. Some say he got transferred to another plant. Others say he just stopped showing up. But I still think about those bins. The names, the smell, the way Calvin never blinked. And I pray to God I never see his face in a crowd. Because if I do, I know he'll already have seen mine. I used to work at this mid-sized logistics company just outside of Phoenix. I was a night shift supervisor, 3 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was decent. And honestly, I liked the rhythm of it. Fewer people, less small talk, and just enough responsibility to stay busy. Most of the guys I worked with were either younger temps who rotated out pretty fast, or older guys like me who stuck around for the stability. In April of last year, we hired a new guy named Joel. He was maybe mid-30s, average height, a little too skinny, kind of twitchy. He had that generic look, short brown hair, thin frame, pale skin like he didn't get out much. The kind of guy you forget is even in the room, unless he speaks up. And even then, he had this weird, flat way of talking that made everything he said sound off, like he was half-quoting someone else. I was the one assigned to train him. On paper, his resume looked solid. Background in warehouse management, OSHA certified, that kind of thing. But from day one, I noticed he didn't really learn anything. He'd nod, say, "Got it," then 5 minutes later do the exact opposite. I'd show him how to log inventory, and he'd stare at the screen like he was seeing it for the first time every time. He made small mistakes, putting items in the wrong bins, scanning the wrong codes, but often enough that I started double-checking his work every night. What made it worse was he never got frustrated, never apologized, just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at me like I was the one screwing up. A few weeks in, I brought it up to my manager, Lisa. She brushed it off, said maybe Joel was just a slow learner, and to give it more time. But then one of the other night guys, Marcus, came to me and asked if I noticed Joel hanging around the building after his shift. I said, no. I usually left right after clocking out. Marcus told me twice now. Around 1 a.m., he saw Joel's car still in the lot. Lights off. Just sitting there. One time he swore he saw Joel just standing behind the shipping containers, not doing anything. When Marcus waved at him, he didn't respond. Just turned and walked deeper into the yard. That week, I started hanging back after my shift, pretended I was finishing reports just to see if Joel would linger. Sure enough, 3 nights in a row, he clocked out at midnight but didn't leave. Just drifted into the back loading area and disappeared into the shadows. On Thursday, I followed him, quietly. There's a utility corridor behind the west end of the building, mostly used for maintenance runs and trash disposal. He was back there, all right, standing next to the industrial compactor. He didn't move when I stepped into view. Didn't even flinch. Just kept looking at the compactor, like he was waiting for it to do something. After a few seconds, he said, "Sometimes when the metal groans, it sounds like a person." Then walked past me without a word. I didn't sleep much that night. By now, I was documenting everything. Times, dates, weird behavior. I even emailed Lisa again, more formally this time. She replied with a generic acknowledgement and said she'd look into it. But nothing changed. If anything, Joel got weirder. One night, someone carved a spiral into the break room table. Not huge, but deep. Like they'd used a box cutter or utility knife. A week later, that same spiral showed up on the wall inside locker 118, Joel's locker. I told Lisa, but she said unless we caught him in the act, there was nothing she could do. Around this time, I noticed tools started going missing. Not expensive stuff, just odd items. A pry bar, a pair of wire cutters, a handheld scanner. Security footage didn't show anything. But then again, Joel always seemed to know where the cameras weren't. Things came to a head in early June. A temp named Devin came running into the office around 11 p.m., pale as hell. He said he went to grab a fresh pallet jack and saw Joel crouched under the mezzanine stairs. Not standing, crouched, just staring at the floor like he was in a trance. Devin asked if he was okay, and Joel slowly looked up and said, "It's going to happen soon." Then smiled. Lisa finally took action, sort of. She put Joel on a week of paid leave, pending evaluation, but 2 nights after he left, someone broke into the building. No alarms tripped, no cameras caught it. But the back door was ajar, and there were muddy footprints, bare feet, leading all the way to locker 118. Inside was the missing pry bar and a notebook. A cheap spiral one, torn and stained. Every page filled with writing in small, slanted block letters. Phrases like, "The skin doesn't matter," "Wake the cold machine," "Eye of the spiral," over and over again. I don't know what happened to Joel after that. He never came back. HR said he voluntarily terminated. Cops came, filed a report, but since nothing was stolen, they didn't pursue it. I transferred to a different facility 3 weeks later. I still work nights. Still like the quiet. But sometimes when I'm walking the floor, I'll catch the hum of a machine winding down, or the creak of steel settling in the dark. And I'll remember what Joel said. Sometimes, when the metal groans, it sounds like a person, and I can't unhear it.